Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
Good morning, folks. Tony Caravan with you for another edition of Tony Caravan Live, the morning show.
Good morning.
And we're going to probably get right into it, I think. I don't see why I should delay much longer.
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
Can we use the network to transmit a message?
We're going to attempt that today. I am drinking an experimental drink here. My latest experiments in age reversal and various other things. Self-experimenting. No, it's actually some hazelnut instant coffee and some cold brew coffee that was brewed for 10 hours. Some that was just made literally minutes ago, and the hazelnut mixed in. And let me tell you about that hazelnut mix. Excuse me. It doesn't seem to like to mix unless you heat it. So I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't cause any problems. We'll just we'll see how that goes. For the usual morning thing, I'm sorry, it's a little bit slow. I'm a little bit slow today. I don't mean to be spaced out. Yesterday was such a great show.
Here's what's happening.
That I don't know. Maybe I mean, it really was. The last two morning show programs, I actually should be on CDs or something. Of course, nobody uses CDs, but they need to be preserved or somehow put into a podcast form. I haven't really done the podcast thing. Hasn't been my scene, but in watching the playbacks on both of those shows, and particularly yesterday, but I remember feeling the same about the day before. They were exceptionally well done shows, and by the time you got to the end, and they were over 2 hours long, it really made a difference. It really, I think they were life affirming, life changing, life. They really, I don't know, they just had something to them that came from the ether. It's like when you write a song and or you're just working on a book, excuse me, and you're just typing away, and there's the flow just keeps coming, and that's beyond the flow of consciousness, which I call I call some of these shows. Now, I mean not just flow of the creativity, that thing in consciousness that we have that is just amazing. Stuck my head out the door this morning, unlike yesterday. The weather's saying it's 43 degrees. Actually feels a little bit warmer than that outside. However, according to the official forecast, today's Wednesday, the 21st of April in the year 2021. And while it is saying it's now 43 degrees here in the former United States, mid-Atlantic states, it's reading on the weather that it's going to start progressively getting colder. So it's supposed to go down from 43 to 41 by 6 a.m. Current time's 4:31 a.m. And I got up at 3 today. Do I look it? I don't know. And 7 a.m., 39 degrees. 8 a.m., it is going to snow. And it'll be 39 degrees with snow. And I have no idea what's going to go on beyond that. Tonight, the temperature is supposed to drop to 28 degrees Fahrenheit. That's below zero. And on Thursday, it's supposed to be 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 Celsius. Friday's not looking that much better, 36 degrees. When they say 36, chances are it's going to hit freezing. And Saturday, 46, but then Sunday dropping down again to 36 degrees. Has anyone noticed the pattern here? No, you haven't noticed that because you live in an alternative universe. And like the people who are pushing this thing, they just keep forgetting that year after year, decade after decade, all right, this planet is cooling. There are even people within the scientific community who realize that we're in a grand solar minimum and the earth is cooling. Okay. There are people, who actually regularly put up the science, the graphs, the peer reviewed papers, et cetera, that demonstrate that. But they still somehow pull numbers and say they try to make excuses for it being for the planet warming. They live in an alternative universe. Okay. See that snow capped mountain there? They live in an alternative universe. Now, I'm not. This show is gonna go in all different ways. And remember, the first 20 minutes, sometimes a half hour, it takes a while for me to get warmed up into everything to get where I want it to be. I've got one of my classic shirts on. You can buy one of those. The iconic image. But anyway, for the umpteenth time, majority of temperatures are taking three ways. Three ways. And they're taking many, many, many ways, but three ways. One, a lot of the reporting stations, the lion's share of the reporting stations are airports. Now, I know this to be true because back even in the 90s, I used to be able to tap into those WX stations. Now, an airport with a black tarmac and constant jet engines coming in and out, that an airport is warmer than is one of the warmer places on the planet. That's just reality. The second place they take temperatures are in either institutional locations or in cities. They have these. In fact, many of the television stations, and I know this firsthand because I've been on the roofs. I've been in studios, of many stations. Many of them, they, at times they used to do this. They don't do too much anymore, but they would actually do the weather report from the roof of their building, and they'd have their little weather station there. And of course, on that roof is the exhaust from their HVAC systems. Of course, it's in a city environment, which is usually a good solid degree Celsius warmer than the rest of the planet. And then there's those people who give excuses and say, well, we take these satellite temperatures from satellites onto like ocean surface water and things of that nature. Recently been written up in many peer-reviewed papers, journals. The surface of the water is warmer than the water itself, than the body of water itself. And those satellites are just reading the surface. They're not getting down deep. And so the surface is warmer. In other words, and I could go on, I could rattle off about 6 other things. So the readings that we've been getting, over the past decades when this whole Gore charade has been propagated are false readings. They're just not right. They're just not accurate. And on top of that, they don't take into account the sun at all, at all, at all, at all, at all, at all, at all. The sun is the source of heat. The sun is the source of weather. The sun is the source of climate. All right. We're entering a grand solar minimum. We're facing crop shortages. Okay. And to top this off with the magnetic action that's going on right now, weakened magnetic field of the earth, weakened magnetic field of the sun, we're seeing an uptick in volcanic eruptions. which are spewing ashes into the sky. That ash stays up in the upper atmosphere. It blocks out the sun. A portion of it. So, yeah, supervolcano would basically put us into nuclear winter, so to speak. But dozens of small volcanoes, it's like the old bird Greek little parable, fable, whatever, where the bird wanted to get a drink out of a urn, Grecian urn. How much is a Grecian urn? Remember that one? And there was water in the bottom of the Grecian urn. And the smart bird realized it picked up a pebble and put it in the urn. And it picked up another pebble and put it in the urn. And it picked up another pebble and put it in the urn. Till it put enough pebbles in the urn that it raised the water level up and the bird was able to get a drink. And that's what happens. So in the aggregate, and again, we can sit here all day, and this isn't about climate, today's issue. But I just wanted to get on that initial rant, maybe because I'm annoyed that there's powder, hazelnut powder that has not congealed or whatever you want to call it in my coffee. It's like I should go in the other room, cancel the show, and put this in a blender. But that's like that's impossible to do. You have no idea the preparation, it takes to get the stuff you have to input to get this thing going and get everything just right. So I was a little bit annoyed. It's early in the morning. Forgive me for that rant, but that would be from a non-physics, that's not physics. That would be this alternative universe. So I'm going to read, as I have been doing lately, is the title of this show, if you're watching this anywhere except on YouTube on a laptop or a desktop. The title is Tony Caravan Live 4/21/21. What is your reality? I'm reading from the description. Usually it says show more underneath the title. And the description is as such. The concept of alternative universes doesn't only crop up in physics, it's as much a pop cultural expression of perception by those who live in a world much different than others, but occupy the same plane of existence. But fear not, this isn't going to get that heavy, I don't think. And of course, I got a link there to my Locals community account, TonyCaravanLive.locals.com, and my website, TonyCaravanLive.com, which I believe also has a link to Locals. And of course, GreatSolarStuff.com, which I was thinking also rhymes with Great Caesar's Ghost. Think of that. GreatSolarStuff.com. Great Caesar's Ghost. From the original Superman, Perry White. Remember that? Right now, you're seeing a bright light to the side of my head next to the GreatSolarStuff.com logo. And of course, Eyes Without a Face, who's wearing a mask that says everything you know is wrong. That is running off of our trusty Jackery that you can get from GreatSolarStuff.com. And that unlike these unboxings by these posers and clickbaiters on YouTube, I'm sorry to be negative about certain things, but you have to. Somebody's got to speak up for the common man, the average person, the consumer who's being bamboozled, right? Because that's what's going on right now. We're being bamboozled and our minds are being played with. I didn't unbox this, okay? Why do I have to show you me taking something out of a freaking box, an Amazon box? Okay? No. I put it here. I turned it on. And what did I do? Watch. You're going to see the light go out. See? No. I plugged in something and we're going to have a 2-hour show, and I'm demonstrating for days upon days upon days that thing powers if the power went out. And remember, we charged an iPod with that?
No showers in the morning. Partly sunny with a chance of rain showers. Little or no snow accumulation. Highs in the lower 40s. West winds 15 to 20 miles an hour with gusts up to 40 miles an hour. Chance of precipitation 50%. Thursday night, partly cloudy with a chance of rain showers until midnight, then mostly clear after midnight. Lows in the lower 30s.
Lower 30s. That's all I need. I posted a picture of my garden yesterday on Locals on Instagram, but also on Locals, a picture of inside my little mini greenhouse, which is going to be turned into a TARDIS. So I actually have a picture here. I mean, I don't know who wouldn't know what a TARDIS is, but for those who don't know what the TARDIS is, it's Doctor Who's little box. So I'm going to paint the front door of it. That's my goal this summer. Though I got to get some lumber to make those little square, wooden ornate, whatever you want to call them. And that's going to be a challenge because the price of wood is so expensive. It's ridiculous right now. But as I said before, this idea that not only is, in physics do we believe in the concept of an alternative universe, but that looking around right now, just in a pop cultural way, it's as if these people are living in an alternative universe around us. And it's enough to drive you nuts. And that's why I get on a little rant when I start out. Because sometimes I just look at stuff and I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me.
We'll have to remodulate our signal to match the network's interlink frequency.
Let's get this show on the road.
Okay, so all that stuff out of the way, and I don't know about this guy who sued himself in the text, but it is an interesting idea in the live chat. If you want to read, if you're reading this later on, you can check that out. So yeah, in physics, people talk about this idea that there are alternative universes. And of course, I mean, this goes beyond physics. It's in even metaphysics. People are into, not just alternative universes, but different dimensions and something they call densities, different densities. And those who are into the afterlife metaphysics, there's a guy, I did a show, I talked about him, even joined one of his groups. I was trying to tie some of the discussions they were having into some of the stuff we have. But the guy turned out to be like a prima donna or something. And I think he either deleted it's like the second time it happened, either deleted my comment on a YouTube video, but certainly didn't respond or want to deal with any of this nonsense. But those types of folks, that's what they believe. They believe that, not everybody, not all, because there's all sorts of people that believe in all sorts of things right now. But I want to cover a little bit of this just to get into it, and then let's see where our flow of consciousness takes us. So, in the concept of this afterlife, from a metaphysical standpoint, and these people that astral project, they believe that we're in this third dimension. In fact, it's almost kind of accepted that we're in this third dimensional reality. across the board in a lot of areas. Forget about the Einstein idea, fourth dimension being time. Of course, Einstein has that space time, but I think that's just a cop out. Like I say, Einstein was clearly a brilliant genius. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and just say Einstein was an idiot or anything. But I think in a lot of instances, Einstein filled in the blanks like a lot of physicists do. My email pops up. That's what that bright light is. I could turn it off, but there's certain things I want to see, such as acknowledgement that the live broadcast is live and etc. But anyway, a lot of physicists, and in my example with Einstein's space-time, for example, and a lot of physicists will go through and they'll just work out these formulas to the very end on these chalkboards, whiteboards, I guess, or on their computers, however they're doing it these days. And the purpose is to just prove that their theory, work out their theory and try to prove their theory on paper. Make their point on paper. I won't get too close to this microphone because I get these things sometimes. And that's fine and dandy if you're submitting a paper to some journal, but it doesn't do it for me. So I don't buy into the whole space-time thing. I don't buy into gravity. I don't buy into gravity as strong as much of a force in the universe as it is, brought out to be. I don't believe in dark matter, dark energy, and I question black holes. I believe in the electric universe. It's electromagnetic, more like that. And I once talked in a show about centrifugal force, rotations of planets and electromagnetism and things of that nature. There are plenty of answers out there, but it's all theoretical, so it doesn't matter. So I'm not going to get into that. And that's just to like torment the people who the physicists who may have randomly saw this, let them get a little freaked out. So back to this metaphysical idea that people have. So, there's one individual in particular, but there's others, and I've talked about these people before, so I'm not going to go on it at length. So they believe they astral project to some like Earth 2, so to speak. And that when you die, you go to Earth 2. And it's almost an instantaneous like thing, because your consciousness, this is going to get a little heavy, and it's not the purpose of this whole show. So I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible. It's going to take a little time, but not the whole show, not even half the show. You have to imagine, and I'm trying to give you an overview of current thought by people that's out there. This isn't real fringe stuff. I mean, it's fringe science to somebody who's a serious academic, physicist working at MIT or, Oxford or Harvard, those kind of folks. But this is kind of semi-mainstream among millions of people. And their belief is that you go to this, that there is this oneness. Okay. So what we call God, the source of everything. Okay. People, I think we're beyond the point of a guy with a white beard in a cloud. Anybody who's been in an airplane knows that, who's been above the clouds. And I've certainly gone around the planet, circumnavigated it, and whatever. And I've seen plenty of pictures from space. So, and I shouldn't even have to mention that, but you have to, because I mean, it's crazy. Some people, So the concept is this common belief among people who disagree with each other on other things is that there is, and they all have different language, different definitions, but generally speaking, it's the same thing. So the idea is that, okay, so God is everything, or the source, or the ultimate consciousness. All right, consciousness, everything. One way would be, and another way would be, say, the universe is conscious. If you've ever seen that picture that they put together, it's not really a picture, it's a computer generated rendition of the universe that shows all the connections of galaxies, that it actually looks like kind of the synapses or the connections of a neural network, so to speak. So that the universe itself is conscious, and that is a consciousness, and we, scale wise, compared to the universe, is just, I mean, we're so insignificant and so small that it's we're as about incomprehensible to the universe as infinity is to us. If you think about that, the speck, well, not even a speck, in the scale of the known, what we would call the known universe, and that's just the one, say, one universe. We are not even a speck. We are not even an atomic particle, scale wise. That's how insignificant and virtually invisible we are. And then there are people that believe in the multiverse. So that shoots away the theory that oneness is the universe. So somewhere, say, if there are these multiverses, still beyond that is the ultimate consciousness, the ultimate source consciousness. And we are a part of that. So, in various, some Eastern beliefs, that it's like a dream within a dream, maybe within a dream. And maybe it's a dream within 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 a dream. And that. And so that thought brings matter, is brought to life. And that gets that would be follow through with the biblical concept, the word was made flesh. Think about that. And the people who look into this stuff and talk about this stuff all the time, they find all these interconnections to it. And so you have a conscious, let's play this along with this word game. And then we're going to get into some other stuff that has to do with just our current real, down to earth reality. But first, let's get this out of the way. So the idea is that you have this one consciousness, and then our consciousness, if you want, what some people would call a soul, our spirit consciousness, this kind of stuff. There's New Age religions, there's Buddhism and reincarnation and Hindu beliefs, and New Buddhism versus traditional, and then the various sects of sects of various other religions, the what they call the Abrahamic religions, that have Abraham in common, and Middle Eastern religions that have been brought into the what was once Western civilization, which I tell you now no longer exists. And so what they do is, what happens is they believe that So out of this one, okay, comes the many, and the many being us. And that with this Earth 2, for example, that this one individual and some other people experience, these people who astral project. And I have to admit, when I was younger, I was able to astral project. And that means being able to leave your body. Okay. It's like it starts with a meditation, and then you actually, you're out there. And and this would be similar to, but not the same as, but similar to people that have what's called an NDE, a near death experience, or an OBE, out of body experience. It's closer to an out of body experience. That's an astral projection. And there are people that astral project to this Earth. I'm calling it Earth 2 for the sake of it. And the idea is that you continue your life and your consciousness exists in various dimensions, if you want to call it that. Okay? And so, and that consciousness, it's all a part of you. It's just a piece. In other words, this is a piece of your consciousness right now. Okay? But you also have a piece of consciousness on this Earth too. And you also have, obviously, you are a part of this God consciousness, the source, right? And ultimately, that is like that is how you transcend that. That's the process of, going back to the source. And I'm just telling you, this is what, this is a belief. There's various different ways people approach this, but millions upon millions of people around the world, and there's books, books and books and books written on this. And that's how they view existence. All right. And your consciousness and your eternal soul, and that you are immortal in that regard. But what they believe is that when you go to Earth 2, you have a physical body, and that Earth 2 is just a little bit better. Now, some people might refer to, but it's not heaven, okay, as defined, in, Western thought, as if it's some paradise. It's a better Earth, and you can do things there that you can't do here. All right. And that's one part of that. But ultimately, what these people get into is this idea that there's this main, that there's the main source consciousness, and that your consciousness is at multiple levels. And eventually you come, all of those things come together. And that's, and this is, so it's, it's some kind of dream within a dream within a dream. I wrote a song, beat poetry song, 2 hours. I think I played it once. I'm not sure if I did or I read the lyrics. And the idea was where I was breaking it down. There was a line in the Bible that says something to the effect of, to God, 1,000 years is but a day. And so I broke down that day, just, mathematically. And I put the human life, I deduced that the human lifespan is but like 2 hours in God's time. Okay. And so I proposed in this beat poetry track that basically life is like a movie. A 2 hour is approximately the average lifespan is but 2 hours in the mind of God, the source, whatever you want to, however you want to describe, the ultimate, omnipotent being. Okay. And so you choose, and so that in our life, what do we have? What did we develop? Apart from war machines and all this other crazy, idiotic stuff that we do waste our time on as human beings. entertainment, movies, shows, right? Dramas. And so my idea is that we choose, imagine this. So imagine being part of some kind of unbelievable consciousness beyond comprehension. All right. And that not so much that you would be bored, that your thought, being pure thought, that you would be bored so much, but that you would do things. Okay. And so one of the things you do is you would choose to experiment, go on. In other words, this life is like going to an amusement park. And your entire life, while you think it may last 70 or 100 years or whatever a lifespan goes, okay? It's really just it's just a move. It would be the equivalent of you going and watching a movie for 2 hours and getting caught up in that drama, that thriller, that whatever it is. And then when you die, then everything comes back to you. Then you're out of the movie. Not so much different than it is when you really get absorbed in a movie itself. Which a lot of people don't think about that. You're sitting on a sofa, you're in your living room, and you're watching a movie. And the movie now on the you've got your your HD TV on the wall. It might be above some mantle, or it just might be on some table, whatever it is. And there's in that room there are other chairs, there are toys on the floor if you have kids. There's paintings on the other side of the wall. There's a door. But when you're watching that movie, somehow you get totally drawn in to this space, which I point out sometimes, where like my hands are inside the box, right? And you're drawn in completely. And you lose consciousness, right? Conscious, awareness of the fact that there's a painting over here, that door leads to the kitchen, that the dog's got some dog toy, or the kid's got a toy truck there, or there's your front door, or or whatever, or the coffee table in front of you, because you're so absorbed in this screen, all right, in this space, and the drama has drawn you in. Okay. So at that time, that's called escapism. And that's why we really kind of go, or used to, go to the movies. And the same would happen in a movie theater. First going to movie theater, there's people, there's some annoying person over there or something like that. But once the movie starts and it's a big screen, it's like, and if you ever look around, at people watching a movie, sometimes their face actually goes like, like they're like as if they're not there, they're totally into that thing. Right. Unless it's some comedy or something goofy, or you got these people that want to like just cut up, and talk during in a movie or something. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about that, the experience, an experience we've all had at some point, and sometimes many times during our life, where we were so absorbed in the movie that we forgot about everything. We forgot about what the rest of the room looked like. We were just totally caught into the screen, and we weren't thinking about work or about something going on or whatever. It was pure escapism. And that's why people go seek out entertainment, or used to anyway. In other words, life is crazy, right? And I just want to, I'm just going to go watch this movie. It doesn't matter. For some, it's a thriller. For some people, it's a comedy. Somebody might want to watch Chevy Chase, goofy movie or something. Somebody else wants to watch Jack Reacher, Tom Cruise, jumping off of buildings and, nonstop, whatever, or Vin Diesel doing something. But the idea is that, yeah, 2 hours is like a blink of an eye. And so the movie's over in your house, and now suddenly it's like, okay, now I got to deal with reality, right? And suddenly you see the room and, whatever, you know. But, well, what if you're part of, so imagine if you're part of, the God consciousness, okay? Omnipotent part. And this is a dream. You're a dream within, the dream, your consciousness is that way. So then you just, you just back up, you're back in that other existence. And that's, it's a fascinating thought thing. It's just something I did. I wrote a song called 2 Hours that deals with that. It's not really a song. It's a beat poetry track. There's just like weird music in the background, but it's like, and I'm speaking this concept out. It's pretty neat. I read it once before, so I'm not going to read it now. But that's a way of saying it without, in the poetic sense. Now, there's other people that believe that this consciousness that you have is you have multiple consciousnesses that simultaneously exist. And that, like, when you dream, sometimes you're leaking over into another consciousness. And so that's why sometimes a dream can be so foreign. I mean, sometimes we just have a dream and it has to do with what happened during the day, what's on our mind. And it's just kind of crazy stuff that kind of interweaves different aspects of actual life, our experiences, or things that go on in our mind. And, these guys like Sigmund Freud, that's how they try to interpret stuff like that. But sometimes you have dreams that are just like you don't recognize any faces in there. And it's just very foreign, very different, very, very, bizarre. And that, and so the idea behind that is that that might be you kind of astral projecting, in a sense, into this like Earth 2 or this alternative universe. But remember, it's still your consciousness. See, in other words, your consciousness is a multifaceted thing that's a piece of everything. So not only is your consciousness multifaceted, but it's a part of the ultimate thing, right? Of God, for lack of a better word, God, so the God consciousness. And at the source, some people call it the source, everything there is. Okay. And none of this goes against religions, because all religions basically, it's just a matter of how you personally want to interpret a thing. It's not heresy. If you're a religious person, it's not heresy to say, you could use the word God, or you could use the word the source of all, or you could say this omnipotent being. It's all the same thing, just a matter of words. That's the problem with society today. And so we'll feed this out of this far out stuff and try to get back down on earth, our earth. And that's part of the problem, is that people have a problem with words, and this thing I talk about all the time, this triggering, people getting triggered by words or this, that, the other. Or like I was talking about yesterday, and I'll just touch on it slightly, because yesterday's show was, I think I managed to really get the point across that show's like worth saving for people. It was the idea that when people they say there's some kind of event or active shooter, or like this trial that's going on and just ended in the US, this guy guilty of this, that, the other. And this whole spectacle that's gone on for one man, or basically two people, two men, one guy, right, who was the victim, alleged victim, and one guy who was the alleged perpetrator. Okay. So here's 2 people out of 8 billion people on the planet, because probably worldwide everybody's aware of this stupid thing, because certainly, but at the very least 320 million people in the US, the former US, have had this, on their television screen day in, day out. Like I say, I got rid of TV, so it's not on my screen, but I'm still aware of it because they're pushing it. They just push it everywhere. You turn on YouTube, and like I say, you can't, you just, scrolling along YouTube to see what to watch, but you're going to see that thing is there. And so these things, why would 2 people matter out of 320 million people? And someone would say, well, everybody matters. Okay. But that doesn't, that's not what I'm saying. Of course, everybody matters. Every individual matters. And if you're a decent human being, you care about human life and people and all that stuff. But what I'm trying to say is that in the grand scheme of things, and what I said yesterday in terms of Genghis Khan, and the conquistadors and the Crusades and the World War II dictators and the hundreds of millions of people who got killed over the millennia, in human civilization conquests of empires that risen and fall, that it's an insignificant act. And to answer someone on the thing, the idea of dreams, it's a matter of remembering your dreams. Everyone dreams. You have REM sleep, what the REM concept. And when you're in REM state, that's when your body is actually healing and renewing itself and doing all its stuff, doing all the things it needs to do. And at that point, this is tied into like your pineal gland, which also I think releases DMT, okay, which is much stronger than pot, and even LSD. And also it releases it's the thing that allows you to releases chemicals to make you sleep. And so we're all dreaming all the time whenever we're in a REM state. We just don't remember it. I've gone through phases where I didn't remember. I didn't feel like I was dreaming at all either. It depends. It all depends. And but yeah, your mind is always going through that stage because it's sorting things out. Your brain's just an electromagnetic thing. Some people believe the pineal gland is like a television receiver. I was trying to touch. That's one thing I didn't finish yet. And yesterday, I tried to go back, and I only noticed one flaw yesterday. I brought up the television set concept twice, and I never finished it. The idea of consciousness and, this idea of, of existence outside of the bioelectric brain, this android body type of thing, that imagine a television screen, or a radio for that matter, but a television is the ideal way of looking at it, TV. So you got your HD TV on the wall and it's off. All right. Or you turn it on. Well, you have to tune it into a station. Okay. And what happens is, so your consciousness is the station. This body is just the TV. And the TV, if it's a smart TV, or if it's like my computer monitor, which I have this big monitor, which is basically like a TV. It's hard to describe. It's pretty big. And it's got a camera, obviously, that I'm talking to you from, and a microphone. And a lot of these, they've discovered that these, I don't know if I think I talked about this before. Some of these smart TVs people buy, they didn't even realize they actually had cameras in them and have microphones in them, and they were recording people, which is weird, but that's a fact. That came out, I don't know how many years ago, several years ago. So who knows what's going on now. So you have this TV or this screen. Let's just call it a screen, whatever. And so it exists, but there's nothing there until the consciousness or till the station, the channel, till it's tuned in to something. And then someone, and so your consciousness is coming through, this vessel, this biological unit, into your electromagnetic brain, utilizing these, ears, which are microphones, right? Your mouth, which is a speaker, your eyes, which obviously are the cameras, right? And then you have these extra senses, which is just, the Android senses, the sense of smell and the sense of touch. Those are just bonus senses. The TV doesn't have that. But an Android we would build might, and some do, especially some of these things that the government's working on right now. So what happens is when the TV, so if the TV's broken, some people say, well, that doesn't make sense. What about somebody who has Alzheimer's or has like a brain damage? Then what happens? What's with the consciousness? And I say, well, that's no different than a television set. What happens if the television set falls off the wall and part of the screen gets broken, or the somebody's blasting, the bass or something on some speaker so loud or so ridiculously loud or something that they blow a speaker, and so it's messed up. Well, that would be the equivalent of brain damage. That doesn't affect the signal, the channel, the station that's coming in, which is the equivalent of your consciousness. Okay, so that's what I wanted to just get that point across, because I didn't touch on that yesterday. That was the only thing missing from that would have made yesterday's video actually, like, I don't know, pretty damn near perfect. It's pretty crazy. So back to this idea of today. And on the title card, it says, living in an alternative universe. And on my description, I'm talking about this pop cultural expression of perception by those who live in a world much different than others. And I guess others' world than that of, I got to fix this, than that of many others, will say, but occupy the same plane of existence. And all that means is that it's how people, it's this idea what's going on right now with perception, and perception is reality for people. So how, and how do you perceive the world has to do with how you've gotten, conditioned through your life. And using the word conditioning is being kind, because it's not, it's really indoctrination. It's really propaganda. It's really mind control. All right. So, the idea is that you cannot change today. You cannot, when I talk about irreconcilable differences, and this isn't just in the US anymore, this is all over Western civilization. And I'm sure it's all over places like in the Middle East and elsewhere. But, in countries like, say, where you have dictatorial control, like communist China, places like that, it may not apply as much. It's just like the continent of Africa. Nobody deals, if there's something, I think it's called Viable TV. It's some YouTube channel. I think that's what it's called, Viable TV. But if you ever want to go look into something that you're not going to see anywhere else, is look into, the what's going on in on the African continent. Okay, excuse me. It's 5:22 a.m. here, so it's like the idea that I even have a voice is amazing. But we ignore, as Westerners, so to speak, we ignore the African continent. When people think of Africa, we're familiar with South Africa. We're familiar with Northern Africa, the Sahara Desert. We hear about that. And then occasionally, when Ebola or some disease comes out, we hear about these other countries in Africa. Various countries. But then those, the names are somewhat familiar to some people. They're not even familiar, and we have no idea what's going on. And every now and then you hear about, years ago, there were massacres, and where 250,000 people were killed with like machetes and stuff like that. But there are cities in Africa. Africa is not some wild, crazy place. There's, there's total unrest. It's China has been making major inroads in there, but they have, it's it's a place that's being ignored because it's being totally abused and colonized by both West and the East for resources. And there are civil wars there. There's unbelievable unrest. But at the same time, there are modern cities, city centers and places in countries within Africa that the average person doesn't even, doesn't know about, And so, for example, because I wasn't even thinking about talking about Africa today. Just to give an example, let me just pull something up. So I'm going to call out some names, and they'll sound familiar, but in general, you would not be thinking about it. So you don't think of Zambia, right? Botswana, right? DRC, Gabon, Chad, right? Mali, Burkina Faso, right? Mauritania, right? You don't know about that. You might hear about Morocco and Tunisia, and of course, Egypt and South Africa and that type of thing. Maybe you've heard of Mozambique and Kenya and Somalia, obviously. We know Ethiopia. But there are all these other places. There's Sudan, but then there's South Sudan. And what happens is that in these places, there are people living, and there are cities and capitals and presidents, in some cases dictators, and there's this whole world that's going on there, and this giant continent, right? The giant continent. I mean, in fact, I should have, let me just double check that. I don't know if they have an overall population, because see, the thing is, Africa's a continent. It's not, some people think it's like a country, that's how ill-informed they are. There's 1.2 billion people living on the continent of Africa. Think about that. 1.2 billion. All right. China has like 1.5 billion, close to 1.5 billion. So in other words, Africa, is like encroaching on China as far as the number of people. That's the continent wise, not again, because Africa is just a continent. It's like South America, is a continent of various countries. Same, no different than, Europe or, being a collection of countries. But, you have 1.2 billion people there. And I just wanted to bring that up because just to show how out of touch people are and how ridiculous it is that the news, particularly the Western news, can be caught up on a single event, right? The hardship, the tragedy, however tragic it is, of an individual by another individual. In other words, an act of violence by one person against another. And that could be turned into something that would be repeatedly brought up on the news and covered, like they say, wall to wall for years, or, for an entire year. In this case of this recent court case that just, I think, concluded yesterday or is in the process of being concluded. But you've got 1.2 billion people that that are being are living in poverty, constantly at risk of being macheted, violent takeovers, civil wars, abuses by major powers coming in to steal their resources, colonialism still happening there. But for some reason, this alternative universe of pop cultural universe, the TV universe, the used car salesman, people selling prescription drugs and TV commercials, they don't even pay attention to those 1.2 billion people. Think about that. That's insane. So, and this broadcast is directed at, mainly the U.S. media. How there's just the absurdity of that, and how people are just, perception is reality. So people are conditioned, indoctrinated, propagandized, or just downright mind controlled to think that some event, like this, shake this up and just try I told you about this. I should have never put that hazelnut crap in there. I'll probably get sick in my stomach when this is all said and done. But what's up with that? It's crazy. So it's the most ridiculous thing in the world. And in the world, you got 8 billion people on the planet, and what used to be Western civilization, is a fraction of the population of the planet. Yet, it's like our issues are like brought to the fore all the time. And these crybabies and protesters and stuff are out there pretending that they're standing up for something. Like, for example, I don't know if you could even say this stuff anymore without getting cut off. But like, if, if Black Lives Matter, what about the 1.2 billion people in Africa, Black people in Africa? Or at least 1 billion of them South Africa has been colonized, and other parts of Africa, coastal areas have been, are not, are not black. They're various other races. I told you Chinese have been making major inroads into Africa. But what about those billion black folks living on the continent of Africa? There doesn't seem to be any concern about that. Hunger, starvation, drought, and violence, civil war, and all that stuff. So, the contradiction, the hypocrisy that we see in in the media and with these so-called activists out on the street is ridiculous. And it's actually, and it's almost to the point, it's actually childish and selfish, because they just don't know how good they have it. And that was the thrust of yesterday's show, was saying like, oh, you're worried about some kind of injustice that happened here or happened there, but you're not worried about, you have no idea what it would have been like if Genghis Khan rolled into your neighborhood and basically raped and pillaged and then burned it to the entire ground. This is what happens, right? It's like World War II. What if there were bombs coming down on your city, on your house, right? And so we have these spoiled brats in the media, spoiled brat activists on the street, protesters, right? Oh, he said, she said, called me a name. They won't accept me as a such and such, right? Or they shot this person. Yeah, that's a tragedy. It's too bad. Yeah, it's too bad somebody, is so childish they called you a name, all that stuff. Yeah, right. I feel sorry for you. That's bad. That's bad. But that's not as bad as Stalin killing and Mao killing 100 million people in the name of communism. 100 million people, right? Or the CCP in China, running gulags, basically concentration camps right now, today, right? And no one seems to give a crap about it. Doesn't make the news. Hasn't made the news. That's like fringe news. Some people are aware of it, but the average person isn't. The people who watch, the major news don't know what's going on. They don't know anything about that. And so it's this, it's these people are these are spoiled brats is all I could say. Yeah, hardships happen, things happen, right? Some psycho goes on a rampage and does some kind of thing, Well, I'm against that. Who isn't? Any normal, rational person would, totally, disavow themselves from any kind of violent activity. Like I say, I think even protests, period, are an exercise in futility. I think protests are stupid, dumb, idiotic, right? And they all end up leading to some kind of violent act or some kind of crazy stuff, or a bunch of people looting. What is looting a store for shoes and HD TVs? And, the one comical one time was a guy had like a washing machine or something in a cart, and he was like wheeling out a washing machine from some store while, during one of these riot / looting events. The heck does that have to do with anything? And how childish and how immature and how self-centered can you be while billions of people on the planet are suffering and living in abject poverty, right? Oh, but somebody called you a name or wouldn't accept your, you as whatever you decided you are, right? Yeah, so what? Big deal. I don't care. I don't care what you want to be, what you call yourself, or anything like that. I don't care what name if person calls me. I don't care. So what? It's no big deal. And in in the grand history of civilization, and like I say, even recent history, because we just had we just had all these wars in the Middle East within the past 20 years. Afghanistan, people coming home with like no legs and arms, right? Brain damage, not to mention the deaths. This is still going on. And there's people here. Oh, we have an active shooter at a KFC or something, right? Someplace convenient where they happen to have a TV station where they can get a quick satellite uplink so the networks can cover it. And it could be, like I say, wall to wall coverage, or some trial about some guy, who was killed by some other guy, whether it's a cop or I don't care what your color is, and whether it was a cop or it wasn't a cop, whether you're white, black, blue, or purple. All right. How does that compare to thousands of soldiers being slaughtered, killed, blown up, coming back in pieces? Right? These brats, these spoiled brats on the street protesting. We want rights for this, rights for that. We want 17 different bathrooms in our schools. Like, yeah, then what? Like my shirt says, which people should buy. Yeah, then what? Then they'll find something else because they're just little spoiled brats. It's never enough. And they live in this alternative universe where they don't even know that there's a continent of Africa. They don't even know that there's South America. They don't know what Venezuela is. Right? They don't know. They don't know how people live outside, in Brazil, in these ghettos. They don't know that. They have no idea of what Southeast Asia is, like Indonesia, right? And islands around, those chain of islands, which is all a very volcanic area. They don't know anything about that. Yeah. They don't even know what the Middle East really is. They don't know the truth about anything there. They don't know the structure. They don't know factions. They don't understand the difference between, these groups of people that have been fighting for generations upon generations. But they are out there protesting for their little cause, right? We want this. Or this guy, or suddenly wall to wall coverage of some trial of one man. What about the billions of people who are, who have far worse injustices, who weren't on, crack, on crack or something? So that's the thing. And so people live in an alternative reality, alternative universe, and it's on the same plane of, like I say, on the same plane of existence as ours. And it just keeps coming back to this irreconcilable differences that people just won't come to grips with. And it's a real mind fuck, you know. They're just messing with people's minds to sell cars and prescription drugs and stupid bling bling products on TV that you don't really need, and they're overpriced to begin with. It's crazy stuff. I don't know. I get, I don't get frustrated with it. Here I see my cows. I've had this bandana for a long time. I finally found it again. So I think I'll wear it for a little while since I keep talking about us being cattle on a tax farm. Just like Tony said here, brainwashed sheep who bleat what they are told. Yeah, we're cattle. And people are, it's insane. It's just insane. They don't get it. So I don't know. I mean, I do these things and I say these things because somehow I've just gotten into doing it. Like I said, I think I've got the Guinness record here or something because I've been doing these nonstop for the entire 2021. I mean, I was doing these things last year too, but I mean, every morning I've done a show. I don't think anybody, some people, like I said yesterday, some people do Monday through Friday shows. Some people do weekly shows, but I don't know anybody who does a show every day, 7 days a week for like 2 hours a day. It's got to be a record. Yeah, it's pretty nuts what's going on and how people are, and there's nothing you can do about it. So the only thing you can do is escape. That's why I always talk about the weather in the morning and stuff, because I'm kind of getting into the outdoors and the gardening and growing stuff. And so I'm really kind of pissed off because where I am right now, that's why that's one of my biggest problems with the people that keep talking global warming is that I know better, that I'm so tired of it being, a month into spring in an area. It's like, I'm not living in Canada. Where I live, we have, my whole life we've experienced the 4 seasons. So I'm neither down south and I'm neither north. It's called the Mid-Atlantic states. And at this particular area, this is a 4-season climate area. So spring means spring, fall means fall, winter is winter. It snows in the winter, fall, the leaves fall. In the summertime, it's hot. In the springtime, the flowers bloom, you plant, things grow. But, for the last couple decades, despite Al Gore and Bill Gates, whatever that kid is, that how dare you, right? They don't know their asses from a hole in the ground. Not to people who've like experienced like the weather and actually are out there all the time. I spend more time. I go outside basically every day, unless it's some kind of ridiculous, winter day or, some torrential downpour in the rain. But I spend the better part of my year outside. Sorry, I can't talk today. Or any day, really. You just get up too early. You can't 5:46 in the morning. I should have slept till 5 instead of I got up at 3 a.m. It's weird. I'm awake though. Yeah, so we're cattle on a tax farm, on a consumer farm. People are perceive reality. They're spoiled brats. They're it's the Peter Pan culture. I never want to grow up. I don't care about anything else. What my issue is the important issue. Yeah. And everybody else issues is like, oh, well, we don't care about that. We don't care about the billions of people in Africa or, what's going on in South America or any of that stuff. Who cares about that? And then let alone expand their minds into this idea, which, kind of, because today's show, my idea was to be like multi-level. That's like a little too much for some people to try to take the idea of alternative. We not only live in an alternative universe of perception via the media and what's going on, in our everyday life, but this idea of alternative universes and consciousness, which like it's what I talk about in my book, Codex, and everything is wrong and all that stuff. So, because that's like, oh, that's too much, or that's woo woo, that's too far out. Yeah, well, I like to know what people are going to do in 10, 20 years, because, things are just going to continue to get worse for those who live in these cities, and the more you oppress people, the more you get these psychopaths that snap out. See, what we're seeing right now in the US is it's like pretty much weekly, is somebody's freaking out. They're snapping out and they're going out and they're going on some kind of rampage. And that's just going to continue and continue and continue until they basically totally implement some kind of police state. And then, it'll still happen because the psychopaths will just, they'll just find other ways to do, to go on a rampage. Because there's no, you cannot fight, or you can't quell a psychopath. That's why they lock them up, in psychiatric prisons or in the supermax prisons and stuff. The US has more people in prison than anywhere else in the world. Now that's a pretty sad commentary on our media and education system. Nobody really talks about that in that regard, because it's the indoctrination of the education system and the propaganda of the media and the conditioning of the media, the media machine, that causes this. What else is it? Right? Because remember, America is just a collection of people from all over the world. Mostly Europeans, but people from all over the world now. So it has nothing to do with, there's no such thing as an American, right? You've got the American Indian, the only indigenous peoples, right? But the vast majority of what you would call Americans, the people in prisons, right, are just a cross section of people from around the world. So why are all of these people imprisoned here, right? What's the difference? Other than the fact that obviously the education system and the media here is causing this aberrant behavior. People say, well, it's the parents and Yeah, well, yeah, the system. Let's just put it down into one simple word. It's the system. The system in the former United States has created, the biggest uh, prison population, you know, and yet this is only 4 or 5% of the world population. That's the funniest thing. So 95% of the people who live on the planet don't live in the US of A, the former United States. But we've got more people imprisoned here. And the US of A, or the former United States, is a collection of people from all over the world. Generational too. It's not just like recent immigrants or something like that. So it has nothing to do with the individuals, it has nothing to do with the various nationalities of the people in the United States. It has to do with the system, how the system is creating narcissistic sociopaths and psychopaths. People don't think about that. I never heard anybody talk about that. Not really. Not in depth, and not, And so that's why I look at these things and I just see a bunch of self-centered, spoiled brats worried about, their own issues, who have no idea how good they have it. See, as bad as you have it in the US, okay, even if you live in like what we would call, an inner city, they don't really call them ghettos anymore, but an inner city slum, you still get, so you're like totally below the poverty line. So you get free food, all right? You get food stamps. You get free housing in most places. They call it Section 8 housing in some areas, right? So you can live for free in either a project, but in many areas they have these Section 8 housing, means you could just move into some place and they'll pay your rent or most of it. You can get close to $200 in food a month, 100% free health care. See, that's another thing that a lot of people in the world don't understand about the U.S. The U.S. has a national health care system, free national health care system. They just pretend on the media that they don't. But they do, but we do. See, I tell this to people all the time. I made a decision to live cheap, because I just wanted to get out. I saw all this stuff happening, 10 years ago. I knew this country was falling apart. Right. I mean, the writing was on the wall. Most people didn't see it, but I saw it. So I was living fairly well. I had projects going. I was doing all kinds of stuff. I could have kept doing that stuff. But I said, you know what? This house of cards is going to fall. It's falling down. And I don't want to be caught. It's like that. It's like musical chairs. I don't want to be the guy, when the music stops, who doesn't have a chair. So I basically simplified my life, found a cheap house, cheap piece of property with a backyard where I can, have a nice yard, garden, detached garage, workshop, man cave, whatever you want to call it, place to hang out. And so I'm living basically in the US, like just below the poverty line, they call it. Intentionally. I'm going to have all my stuff, right? Right. I don't need to buy anything new. So I got this, so because I'm below the poverty line, I get free healthcare. and I get food stamps, they call it, like free food. And, and some other types of things. Now, some people may look at that and go like, well, that's ridiculous. That I'm against that. That's socialism. That's, I'm like, no, man, I worked my whole life. I worked and paid into the system. I made more money than the average person, So the U.S. has free healthcare for anybody. The only people who don't get free healthcare are people who are making money. Like first, in other words, if you have a really good job, like when I worked for a company for 20 years, and they had healthcare, and it was good healthcare. So I didn't have like copay, like, if I had had to get like a pill or something, whatever, the copay was nothing. It was like, a couple bucks or something. And any doctor visits and stuff, I didn't have to pay anything. So the only people who don't have free health care and any poor person has free health care with no copays or anything like that. And plus we have a really good health system. Now, the people who don't are the people who are in the middle. And I hate to say this, but a lot of them are just spoiled brats who waste money buying consumer products advertised on frickin' television. Or want to live in a bigger house and have a bigger car and some kind of and a bunch of bling bling and bright and shiny objects in their frickin' house. And so they're broke, they say they're broke, but they're not broke. Right? They make $30, $40, $50, $60,000. I know people like that, and I hear them complain. Oh, yeah, I had to pay such and such because of, so actually yesterday I was in my backyard. Next to me is a doctor's office. And I was out hanging out in the backyard because I'm trying to prepare for this like freezing weather because I already got plants in the ground, lettuce and stuff like that. I'm trying to cover it up because I don't want that stuff to get frozen. And so I was just hanging out in my backyard. It was a decent day yesterday. It wasn't that bad in the daytime. The sun was out. And some guy who was going to the doctor's office, pulls up in his car because in between my yard and this doctor's office, there's like a parking, it's like not really a parking lot, but it's like a driveway where they park cars, the doctors and nurses, and sometimes a customer, or patient, I guess, or whatever, parks there. Well, this guy was some kind of patient, an older guy, not too old, but even he was older. And so he pauses, by my fence, because I've got a fence separating the place. And he was saying something about, well, there's some problems with that's why I'm doing the show in the morning, because they're messing with the sewers, the roads outside, and it's too noisy to do in another hour, my house will be shaking like it's an earthquake because they're trying to fix the sewers and they don't know what the hell they're doing because they're morons. But anyway, so the guy was bitching about that, but he pulls up in a nice, like, new car. And then he was saying, yeah, and I've got this, prescription the doctor gave me. And it's like, I don't know how I'm going to afford it. And I was thinking to myself, well, maybe if you wouldn't be buying a new car every couple of years, I wonder what your house looks like. I felt like saying, granted, there's exceptions to every rule and things like that, but a lot of people just find, are so caught up in this super material world. I'm not talking about, technology. I mean, look, I got toys galore, but I don't waste anything. I buy what I need and I have what I have, but I don't really, I'm not like going to get the latest thing that slices and dices just because it's on TV. And I bought a house, which is a half decent house. There's nothing wrong with this house. I mean, I got a roof problem, but I'm dealing with it. I paid next to nothing for the place, so you got to figure there's going to be something wrong with it. But these people, they're living above their means, and they have problems. I can't afford my copay, and that's that whole thing. And so the rest of the world looks out at the US and they hear this like as if the US doesn't have people are denied health care or something. Nobody's denied health care here. If you're poor, if you're in the poverty level, you get absolutely 100% free health care, free medical, and free prescription drugs, and you get free food, and you get free housing if you need it. That's the way it is in the US. That's why all these immigrants are coming up from South America, South and Central America, and Mexico, because it's like a free-for-all. You get free medical, free food, and free place to live. Well, what is the average peasant? And the average peasant, see, they're smart. Down there, it's not about bling bling and bright and shiny objects. People just want a roof over their head, food, right? And if they get sick, they get a doctor takes care of them or something like that, right? Mother baby gets taken care of. Mother, that's the way it is in the US. That's why people come here. And then the rich, make no mistake about it. This country's got a lot of millionaires. This country's got billionaires. Well, all those people don't have any medical problems, medical or food problems. They're living like kings in the US. Just look at the cities and stuff. I mean, these aren't yachts here, but I mean, people, you go to any coastal city in the US and it's filled with yachts, right? Skyscrapers, I know people in New York were paying $5,000 a month rent, and they weren't complaining about it because they were making, 6 figures, some making 7 figures. So it's these people in the middle, right, who just don't understand, like, they watch TV or they watch these shows and they think, oh, I've got to live like that. So they buy a house that they can't afford. They live above their means, it's called. And they see these commercials because TV here is all about selling cars. So I say, everything's about selling cars. I'm the only guy who says that, but it's the truth. It's all car commercials. And so people feel that they need these like ridiculous cars. And I look at a car as like a means to an end. I mean, if I won the lottery or something and nothing better to do, sure, I'd, drive some kind of crazy car, But beyond that, if it's don't live above your means. And if you don't live above your means and you have a medical expense, you can afford it. But people have to live above their means. So I don't, like I said, there's exceptions to every rule, and there's some victims of circumstance that you have to feel sorry for, maybe some single mom or somebody had some death in the family and, this hardship here, hardship there, that stuff is reality. I'm generalizing. But for the most part, it cracks me up in one regard. Because I'm tired. I used to feel sorry for certain people, but I can't. I got an ice cube in my mouth. I can't feel sorry for them. Because, there comes a time in your life where you have to take personal responsibility. I know what it's like to suffer. I've I've been flat broke. I've also done really well and had a lot of money. But yeah, man, people don't get it. But the media is crazy. So it's an alternative universe. And that's what I was really trying to say. People are living in an alternative universe here. So forget about the physics thing I talked about earlier and all that, you know, Earth 2 type of concept, the metaphysics, all that spaced out stuff, whatever that is, who knows? Those are good thought experiments. Those are fun things to mess around with, think about, talk about, but I look at the average person, and they're living in an alternative universe right now, right next to you, you know, as far as perception is concerned, the way they perceive things. They just don't get it. And they're never going to get it because they're constantly being bombarded with this, propaganda, this indoctrination, this mind control from the system. Let's just call it the system because it's the media. I call it the corporatocracy, whatever you want to call it. And you just think, well, what's going on, man? It's not going to change. But they're out there with their little signs with their, markers on cardboard, and they're stapled to a piece of wood or stick. And they're up there. I want, we want this, we want that, justice for this, such and such matters, lives matter. So somebody in charge of one of those organizations that I saw on a thing has something like 3 houses. They're all like worth like close to one of them was worth more than $1 million or something like that. These groups, they get all this funding and the leaders of them are all living like millionaires. It's just like the politicians. The politicians are just all living like, like millionaires. And they pretend they're standing up for the common man. They don't care about the common man. This is the common man. This is what this is what the common man is to them. That's it. That's all we are. So it's pretty crazy to live this way right now and to watch this. So the best you can do is you just got to live your own life and just be detached from it. That's what I tell people. Do what I did. Do whatever you want to, but do what I did. You just detach yourself from them. Be as much removed as possible from this insane theater. There's like a Jim Morrison line, this insane theater. That's what it is. People don't see that. Rational people don't see it. And there are people out there that are in for a really big surprise in like the next 6 months, 18 months. Because this is, like I say, the sledgehammer is coming down pretty fast. All you have to do is look around. And they, when they consider us cattle, they're just sending people to the slaughterhouse. Who knows what the hell they're doing? I don't trust the government. I know the media lies. I know the politicians are controlled by the corporatocracy, the corporations. I know the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset's already happening. I know Western civilization has already fallen. I know this is the former United States of America, and that what's left, people have irreconcilable differences and are never going to come together. There's just simply no way. There's no way. And then there's all these people that are believing, like right now, this is what I'm saying, people live in an alternative universe. I noticed on YouTube yesterday, just scrolling around that they're still talking about the 2022 and the 2024 elections in the United States as if, and these people are behind it, and they're, trying to fundraise, and they're talking about holding rallies and changing Congress and all of this sort of stuff. And I'm looking at it, I'm going like, are you out of your freaking mind? They just don't see the writing on the wall. They don't get it. There is no government anymore, right? There are only corporations. This is the same in the UK. It's the same in the EU. This is a corporatocracy, right? The world is a corporatocracy. The biggest thing going on right now is digital currency. This is the one nobody's paying attention to. Forget about this plague, because that's like what bioweapon, whatever the heck that is. That's some kind of crazy thing going on. All right. The biggest thing is that China has been wanted to be the number one economy, and they built the new Silk Road. Took them years to do it. And they wanted to take over by 2019. And they didn't. It didn't happen. But, they got 1.5 billion people. They've got a lot of resources, right? The Communist Chinese Party is big. I can tell that it's getting cold outside. Remember I told you the temperature was going to drop here? Suddenly it's dropping. It's already dropped to 37 degrees just since I started this. And I started this and it was like 45 Fahrenheit. And now we're down to 37. And they're still calling for snow. So it's going to snow today within the next couple hours. Global warming. How dare you? But what was I saying? Oh, so people are into this idea that they just don't understand reality. That the world is control. That China. Here's what I was trying to get at. Sometimes I got off on a tangent there for a second. They're creating digital currency because there's so much debt in the world. Like the US, which was the leading economy, still is technically, okay? Is $38 billion in debt, something like that. Let me pull this up. The screen's going to get real bright white, but let's see. US debt. They have this US debt clock in real time. You can look that up. The US national debt is $28 trillion. All right. And the US federal spending is like $6.7 trillion. But the income tax revenue is like $1.6 trillion. All right. Think about that. And federal tax revenue is like $3 trillion. So in other words, the debt in the US debt alone, forget about global debt, because countries like Africa, South America, Southeast Asia, all these countries, European countries. People forget about Greece, and Spain and Italy. Those countries are like really in dire straits financially. Right? People don't talk about this because a lot of people don't understand economics, but it's not that complicated. It's, to understand it. It's pretty simple. If you could balance your own checkbook, or, if you can make change for a $10 bill, you can understand global economics. It's not, they try to make it seem more complicated than it is, right? You owe somebody a debt, okay, that's the same as national debt. Okay. Well, the debt is so high, all right, that it cannot be paid, ever be paid back, ever. Like ever, 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 forever and ever and ever and ever. All right. It's too high. So the central banks, they just make money. They just create money out of thin air. And so it was what they call fiat currency under the dollar system, because it's not based on anything, right? Not that being based on anything means anything, because that's kind of an illusion too. I'm going to be winding this up soon, but this is a real interesting ending. Very few people ever make it to this. It didn't really matter that they took us off the gold standard or the silver standard, right? And that we have paper money now that's worthless. That's not even worth the paper it's printed on, as they say. They call it fiat currency. And then they created the blockchain. And just out of curiosity, let's see what Bitcoin is today. Bitcoin value today, 55. It's going down. So people are selling Bitcoin. Bitcoin was worth $62,000 just last week. Now it's down to $55,000. I told some people, I said, you could give fractions of Bitcoin out. I said, give me a couple fractions of Bitcoin. If people would have given me a couple fractions of Bitcoin when it was up to 62, I could have actually got my roof fixed. But because they were greedy and wanted to hold on to it, they lost way more than that. They lost way more than that just because people are profit taking. So Bitcoin's on its way down. But what is Bitcoin? Nothing. Bitcoin is nothing. Bitcoin is a fake money, right? People mine it. It's like computer, a computer solves an equation and you get a Bitcoin, slightly more complicated than that, but that in simple terms, that's what it is. And so now the Chinese want to create a digital currency based, the Chinese and the Russians have a lot of gold. In fact, I think they have more gold than the US, more gold than anybody in the world, I think, physical gold. But like I say, here's like a gold coin, okay? Now, somebody comes to my house, say, in some apocalyptic dystopian future, and they come to my house and they have a gold coin, right? And they say, hey, I see you garden. You had a garden last year. I bet you got some, I'll give you this gold coin for some potatoes. You got any potatoes or any kind of carrots or some kind of food, maybe a roll of toilet paper or something? I'll give you this gold coin, right? And the price of gold's worth like, I don't know, $1,700, $1,800. And my answer, I've said this before, would be, well, no, what else do you got? What do I want a gold coin for? It's just a rock. It's a piece of metal. Right? It's like these things. Perception is reality, but after a while, if you perceive reality in a certain thing, you go, so what am I going to do with the pile of gold? Then I'll be out of toilet paper and potatoes and carrots and stuff. If you want some potatoes and carrots and a roll of toilet paper, how about, do you have any lumber? Do you got like a couple of some 2x4s, some wood? Or do you have, a battery, couple batteries? I'll trade you a roll of toilet paper for a couple of batteries or candles, or a piece of wood. You see what I mean? People don't get it. Gold is worthless because it's it's not tradable. Doesn't mean anything. And it's the same with Bitcoin. It's the same with fiat currency. Somebody comes in and they have a wad of cash and say, I'll give you $100 for a roll of toilet paper. And I'm going, well, I can wipe my, what am I going to use with a roll of cash? And so, and that's the whole thing. So China right now is trying to create this digital currency so that they can, operate and become the global economic power. And they want to use that my belief is within the next 6 to 18 months to purchase as many goods as possible. Like resources, real hard resources. Like they bought $50 billion worth of from the U.S. farmers last year. And the U.S. said in the last year, they were saying, oh, this is a great thing for our farmers. And I was looking at it and going like, you just sold our fucking food. And we're going to need that. Because when they sell that farm stuff, it's like grain, soy, wheat, the basic elements that are storable. You can store them for, they preserve, and that basically everything's made out of, these days. Everything's made out of corn and wheat and grains and soy and stuff. They're the raw ingredients of everything. And they just keep them in, these, store them in these bins. They keep them temperature controlled. That stuff lasts, long enough. And then they process it and turn it into food. I mean, it's not like a fresh grown vegetable or something, but I mean, it's sustenance. So, people aren't even aware of this. And in the US, they got rid of the pipelines and they're trying to want to phase out of fossil fuels. And my question is why? Why? We don't have any pollution in the US. The US is, it's blue skies and sunshine, when it's not raining. But I mean, we don't have any problems. We don't, CO2 is good for the planet. It greens the planet. That like how they manufactured that's like making people afraid of catching a cold. They just create these bogeyman. So it's interesting things that are coming up, down the pike in the short term, 6 to 18 months, that people are completely off the radar. And that's why I say people are living in an alternative universe, but we're all on the same plane of existence. Right? So it's like, if you want to get into those thought experiments, like I got in when I started out talking about, astral projection and multiverses, that's fine and dandy. But right now, down to earth, people are living in an alternative universe. They really don't know what's going on in the world. They don't know what's going on in their own neighborhood. They don't know what's going on anywhere. They just don't get it. They don't understand a term that's called socioeconomic geopolitics. Socioeconomic geopolitics. The average person, you say that to them, they're like, what are you talking about? Socioeconomic geopolitics. That's how the world is run. It's all about socioeconomic geopolitics. Right? Geoengineering, social engineering. These are words the average person don't understand. They don't know what the Great Reset is. They don't know what the World Economic Forum is about. They, Davos, they don't know what goes on at Davos. They don't know what goes on at the UN. They don't know what goes on in Brussels at the EU. What those people talk about, planners, right? That's what they are. They're social planners, social engineers. That's what they are. People don't know that. They're cattle, man. That's what we are. We're cattle. I mean, push the button there. That's all we are to them. And they get through. They'll get through this thing. Because that's the way it is. There's too many of us on the planet. They believe in depopulation. So thanks for watching. It's an interesting to see what's coming down. I mean, I'm doing okay. I'm just doing this stuff to try to get the word out. But go to greatsolarstuff.com. Get some of this stuff. Look, it works. That light's been on for 2 hours. Charged by this thing right here. It's a 92%. Hardly even loses any power. I could be running multiple things on that. Get a shirt, get the iconic shirt. I wear them. They're comfortable as hell. Or everything you know is wrong. Go to TonyCaravanLive.com or go to locals.com. Check that out. Anyway, that's it for today. Have a good day. I guess I'll be watching it snow. All right. A month after spring. Watching it snow today. Imagine that. Yeah, global warming. Right on. Cheers. Take care. Talk to you soon.